Good evening, everyone. Boa noite. Thank you so much, the audience, and thank you, everyone who made this possible. Bruno, Lucy, what an honor to be here with you. I wanted to start, Bruno, by asking you, you were 20 when you made this really blows my mind, because when I think what I was doing when I was 20, like, yeah, not even, let's not get there. But what is really impressive is that how well the movie aged as well, and we see that in many different reviews of the movies nowadays. One including, I think, at the Los Angeles Times, that pointed to the fact that at the time some people saw the movie as sexist even, and today it became sort of an icon of feminism. But 20. When you did your first movie, actually, you 17? Was that how old you were? Yes, and it was also about the main voice was a female voice. Then you did another one in which the same thing happened. So why did you choose to do Dona Flor e seus dois maridos, Dona Flor and her two husbands, from a female voice? Why?
I'm a romantic, and I've been always a romantic. But I was not good looking. I was never, my brother, who passed away already, was, my younger brother was very good looking. So women would go out with him first and would and then they would sort of want to marry me because I was very hardworking. And so I had to become successful first in order to get lucky with the girls. I was a nerd, but I was always very romantic. My preferred filmmaker, above all, is François Truffaut. I dedicated actually one of my films, Bossa Nova, to him and to Tom Jobim. So I guess I mostly made films with leading female characters, I think desperately trying to understand women, or the female being.
Do you feel like you got there?
What, sorry?
You understand us now?
Well, I don't think I will ever understand. I mean, I have another problem too, is that my parents have been married for 70 years. And this is a big, I see a shrink since I was 13, not the same, of course, because my parents are too happy. And that's a huge, huge pressure on anybody. So, and I've been married 5 times. So, and I guess making films with leading female characters was very much, an attempt to at least get close to them.
And that's fascinating, actually. I heard a recent interview with Luis Carlos Barreto in which he mentions that he keeps changing his mind about everything. He's not really a steady person, except for Lucy. This is the one thing that it's always been steady and there all the time. So I just wanted to ask you to describe for us, because I think all of you know we're doing this because it's a tremendously successful company, 60 years, over 150 movies. What was a day in the life of the Barreto family like?
I would say that we are always working, and we are always dreaming. Both come together, and we are always talking about movies and talking about projects, ideas. And both of us. And the movie is part of our lives, That's true. That's the truth.
Is it true that Bruno used to live in a basement watching movies there all day long? Is that true? Is it true that he used to live in the basement in the house and watched movies all day long?
No, they all day long. The children, no, they went to school. Yes, no, they went to school And as I was in a private school, I always wanted them to be in a school, regular school, public school, yes. And, but anyway, we used to live in a, I would like my children to have the same youth that I have, the same infancia.
Yeah. Upbringing.
Eh?
Upbringing, yeah.
Yes, and I bought a house that, it was a beautiful house that was from the
French
invasion of, from the French when they were in Brazil, and this was like from the 80s.
1800.
1890, and with a beautiful backyard. And I would like them to be by themselves as I had the chance to be, you know, no servants, no
Help?
no help at all, no babá.
Help. No nanny,
Yes,
no help.
yes. And that was the way it was. In this house also, the Cinema Novo was there also, you know. And this was the 60s. When we moved to this house, it was 62. And I would like, as I said, my children to be free, not with a supervisor with them, no. And that's the way they grew up. They grew up. And in the Cinema Novo also, the first editing table,
The first flatbed editing table, Steenbeck.
A Steenbeck that came from Sweden, from Arndt, Zuckersdorf. The first Steenbeck, as I said, wouldn't have a place to stay. And I said, why not? It can stay at my house. And being so, movies like os fuzis, como é que são os fuzis?
Yeah, it was a Rui Guerra film.
The guns,
the
no.
shotguns.
That's not the name of Rui Guerra was edited there. The Circus from Arnaldo Jabor were edited there. Also, Barravento from Glauber Rocha. And
many
others.
Very few cinema.
Yes,
Novo.
and the children, Bruno and Fabio, would be around this. Anyway, the directors would come to the kitchen, would take yogurts from the children. You know, it was a mess, my house.
A very productive
Yeah,
mess.
the movie all the time, and they grew up with the editing table and with the Cinema Novo around them.
We grew up disturbing the directors that were working and the editors. And Fabio and I would go up there and, look at the...
Would grab them.
At the films that were being edited, and then the director and the editor would say, get out of here, kids, don't disturb us and all that. But sometimes they would go to the kitchen and eat our food, the food that we like.
I think it's also fascinating
Our treats.
to contextualize what was going on in the 60s. The house, it's almost simultaneously to the founding of the company in 1963. And in 1964, we have a dictatorship installed in Brazil. So the company exists throughout this regime in which censorship was law. But at the same time in which there were policies, nationalistic policies, that determined that Brazilian movies should be protected to some extent and supported financially to some extent. How could you navigate this universe in which you're trying to be creative and looking at a movie like that, it's really unfathomable that you're going to show this during a dictatorship and cinema novo, as you mentioned. So how do you make these things work side by side?
That's an interesting question. Although there was a dictatorship, it's true, and it was awful, and there was torture, and it was awful, it wasn't really a directive from the military government to foment, to protect, or to support the film industry. No, that was very much done by the producers, like my parents and other producers as well. And eventually, of course, the technocrats, the people that worked, the ministers, they were very, they were culture. They really valued Brazilian culture, you know, and therefore, although there was the censorship, but the censorship wasn't really linked to the Minister of Culture, the Minister of Economy. So there was this. So in the making, in the inception of the projects, you could do whatever you want. You could do whatever you want. When it was time to release the films, you would go to Brasilia, the capital, and the film had been screened, and you would negotiate with the chef of the Bureau of Censorship what to cut and not to cut, but maybe darken a little bit, you know. So, for instance, in Dona Flor, we negotiated to the scene that they called sodomia, right, which is the last scene between Dona Flor and Vadinho. They said that they said, no, let's just leave the last third of the shot, so we don't see their bodies, and then we can darken a little bit. So, but that would be done just on the prints. They wouldn't touch the negative. So the film would be, you know, would travel, would be shown all over the world, you know, as it was originally made. You know, so it's curious, it's ironic that today, and I'm not comparing, I'm just like, you know, throwing an idea out there, you know, today you have censorship as well, but it's from the corporations. And is this politically correct? Is this not? Is this correct like this? Is this correct like that? You know, and today the script doesn't get made. Today, you know, there is a censorship that, no, I don't, you can't get finance for a certain kind of film because it doesn't fit, you know. So it's hard for an artist who wants to think, you know, freely. And I'm not excusing the artist from political and social and human responsibilities, not at all. I think that when you make a living doing art, you have a social, political, and humanistic responsibility, definitely. But at the same time, you need to be free when you're creating. So, you know, there's no correct answer about that, but it's ironic because I lived both times, you know. So the truth is, you could do any film you wanted at the time. And then at the time to be shown in the theaters, then there would be censorship. Yes, I had a few of my films shown with cuts. And there would be a disclaimer before the film saying, this film was approved to be watched by anybody who's, 18 or plus. That would be the R rated here. And it would say with cuts, or it would say without cuts. And the audience would boo when it was written with cuts. You know, it's famous that when Clockwork Orange was shown in Brazil at the time, there was a black dot that would cover the genitals of the actor, the main actor, whose name escapes me right now.
The other thing that, now that you mentioned that, I thought of one quote by Jorge Amado, the author of the book that inspired the movie, when he was, Clarice Lispector, if I'm not mistaken, was interviewing him, and he said something like, I don't have a commitment to the audience has a commitment with me. And I love this, but it also makes me think a lot about the freedom that the author, the creator has, while at the same time being a company that has to, make a profit, that has to be in a certain number of rooms, that has to speak to an audience. How do you reconcile that as a family?
Well, when I think about a project, of course, you don't think about having censorship. Of course not. You think about a subject, a story that deserves to be told, that deserves to be known. And you don't think about censorship. There shouldn't be censorship. That should be just not good for under 10. Not fit for 17, 18, and the parents they are in charge, and to take care, and that's it. We don't think. I never thought about censorship. I always thought that if I want to tell a story, of course I want to tell the story for most of the people, of course. And from time to time, you think that you have a story that probably wouldn't please to everybody, but it's interesting, and it's probably something that is quite personal. It could be, and but you always have to think: is this story really deserve to be told? I always think about that. It's not really a question of money, but of course, a film has to be paid. I'm not going to make a film for my pleasure. No, it is a film that has to pay. And but it's always a story, a dream that you think that could interest most of the people, no? I don't think if I really answered your question.
You did. That's a beautiful answer, actually.
No, there is a quote from a great American film critic. I don't remember now if it was Vincent Canby. I know it wasn't Pauline Kael, who I was a big fan of. But the quote is, the audience wants to see something that they don't know that they want to see, but when they see it, they like it. So that's what keeps me making films. Of course, as she said, I want to make films for as many people as possible. As Frank Capra used to say, if people come in, you're in. If people don't come in, you're out. And that's true. But, that doesn't mean that you're just going to, tell stories that you think people want to hear or want to see. So then I go back to I think it was Vincent Canby that said, and the huge hits, they happen when it's that surprise happens. So I paid my ticket, I sat there, and I never thought I wanted to see that story, and I saw that story, and I loved it, and I walked out of the theater happy and moved and feeling better. So that's what makes us, risking money and time to have that thrill, to be able to give the audience that thrill.
No, and it's always a question of the budget. If you really think you like a story and you think the story should be told, and but I am always very aware of the audience, of course, being a producer. And I think to which public this film would be addressed. And this public, what is approximately the capacity, what they would deliver back to me. You know, I was always very attentive to a story. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't tell the story, but the budget should be adjusted, you know, because otherwise you will want to do only the stories that are about to clash, we could say, to make a lot of money. But sometimes you have some stories that are that could be addressed to a certain public and could be told also, and sometimes should be told. And you have to address the budget.
You're both very passionate and romantic, and I don't want to monopolize the discussion, so we're going to open for some questions from the audience. You can raise your hands if you have questions. I just wanted to also reinforce the fact that it's 60 years. It's very impressive. It's over 150 movies, and also you picture many different geographies in Brazil. It's not only Rio and São Paulo, which is something that people talk a lot about and question. It's, you see Brazil in the movie. So this is also, I think, a very important point to make. So I saw a hand over there. Yeah. I think, oh, sorry.
Hi, boa noite. I just want to say first, I'm a Brazilian student here in New York, so I'm just very happy to find a festival of Brazilian movies that I can go and bring my friends to. And since you were talking about stories and finding the right stories, specifically, it just jumped to me the fact that this film is an adaptation. So there is, in an adaptation work, the work of finding the stories that you want to tell, and how do you like translate these stories to another media. Why do you like, how do you find this story? How do you know that this is the story that you want to tell in this other format? And how is your process to make this transition of like, basically, how do you adapt something?
The wonderful master Italian director Luchino Visconti said once that they asked him, why didn't you adapt The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann instead of Death in Venice, which was the film he made? And he said, the great books, and you know, Thomas Mann's most greatest book was The Magic Mountain. He said, the greatest books shouldn't be translated to another medium. They are so great already as literature that they will not translate well into film, into drama narrative, into dramatic narrative. So I agree with what Visconti said. And Dona Flor is not the greatest book that Jorge Amado wrote, but the story, the idea was very good. You know, it's a fact that all the great American novelists tried to become screenwriters and they all failed. That's a fact. Steinbeck, Raymond Chandler, you name it. Faulkner, you name it. They all failed. Because there's nothing more distant than dramatic narrative, which is screenwriting, than literature. So, to answer your question, to adapt a book, you know, you've got to really, there's another expression in Italian when you adapt a book. It's interesting because it only exists in Italian. The first thing you have to do is to tear the book apart. You know, you have to do with the book what they do with a bull when they're going to kill, you know, and get the meat. You know, when you just have to strip it and then get to the essence, and then rebuild the narrative in a dramatic way. Because drama is conflict. You know, literature, it's a lot easier to tell a story in the literary format than in the drama format. Because in the drama format, you are in the straitjacket that you have to tell everything or most of it, you know, in between the conflict, through the conflict between the characters. So that's it. If you can read a book or a short story or a novel and sort of like, you know, imagine that translated into the conflict, you know, it's worth adapting it. It's worth telling that story. For me, it's the characters. I'm always, if a character motivates me, if I feel empathy, if I want to spend time with those characters, I want to tell that story. Usually, they're characters that are very far away from me. You know, I think there are two kinds of filmmakers like Woody Allen, like Almodovar, like Bergman, that Fellini, that are mostly telling the same story, and they all relate a lot to themselves, and storytellers like a lot of American filmmakers and you know, French and some other, Truffaut was like that tell stories that in an oblique way they relate to that story. I'm more of a storyteller, and I find myself in characters that I never thought I would have something to do with. But by the time I finish the film, I know exactly who I am and where I am and why I told that story. But the process of telling that story it's like going to analysis. It's like discovering yourself.
I think I saw another hand. Do we have time for one more? No? Oh, okay. So thank you all so much for coming and staying for this conversation.
Thank you
Bruno
very
Barreto,
much.
Lucy Barreto, thank you so much.
Thank you.